theyeshiva.net.
So what was the summation? The summation of what we learned was that the soul essentially neshama shenasata b'tahiri. Right? The neshama is before barasa, it's tahira. In other words, it's higher than being a nivra. It's part of the boire. It's part of the boire. Which is basically an idea.
Before you mean before you're born, or
Even after you're born.
every day?
It's what the neshama is. The source, the core of the soul is tahira. It's beyond bria. And the truth is, this is an explanation. There's a Sefer Kuzari, Sefer Kuzari by Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. It's considered one of the most basic works on Jewish philosophy and theology, ethics, by Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, who lived in the 1000s, the 11th century in Spain. He was a poet, he was a philosopher, he was a great leader. His name was Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, the Kuzari. The Sefer Kuzari is basically a novel. It's a fiction novel about a non-Jewish king from the Khazarite, it's basically near the Black and Caspian Sea, southern Russia, who converted. Now that's a historic fact, that there was a king of Khuzar who converted his whole country, and for a few hundred years there was a Jewish empire in southern Russia until it was destroyed. But the Kuzari created a fiction around how he converted. So basically the king has conversations with a Muslim, with a Christian, and with a Talmud Chacham, to decide which is the true religion, and then he becomes a Jew and he converts his entire nation. That's a real story in history, but the Kuzari made a book based on it, of the so-called conversation that the king had with the Muslim, the Christian, and the Jew. So it became a very fundamental work in Judaism called the Kuzari. It's accepted almost universally by everybody. So in the Kuzari, he says over there that there's 4 categories in the Bria. There's Doimim, Tzemeach, Chai, Medaber, and then he says there's Ummah HaYisraelis. There's the Jewish people. It's not part of Doimim, Tzemeach, Chai, Medaber. And it's a very hard to understand. What does the Kuzari mean? But this is what he's referring to. He's referring to the idea that the soul is not considered a chelik of the Bria. The soul is considered a chelik of the Boire, of the Creator, not of the creation. And that's the whole yesod of what we explained yesterday, what emunah is. Emunah means, because of this dimension of the soul experiences the Creator just like it experiences itself. And this is really the secret of the Jewish people. For example, the obsession of anti-Semitism against the Jewish people, which is irrational. Nobody even knows why, can't figure it out. There's something about the Jew that just sticks out. It's like a sore thumb in the consciousness of humanity, and it's always been that way. And whatever the Jews tried doing, it didn't help. Secularizing, integrating, assimilating. Ultimately, it came back to haunt them. Because the hatred of the Jew is really that the Jews carry the burden of God in history. Even the most secular Jew in the world, in this sense, is not less than divine than the most religious Jew. The distinctions between religious Jews and secular Jews ultimately is external. It's not in this level. On this level, there's complete equality between the Gadol Shebegdolim and the Katan Shebektanim. Because this Nekuda doesn't have to do with his choices, his level of observance, his knowledge, or his commitment. This Nekuda has to do with the fact that Ata v'chartana mikol ha'amim, that the neshama is a chelik of the boire, not a chelik of the bria. This is in him. How he harnesses it, how much he's aware of it, what the outlet is, this differs. You can't compare it to how Freud experienced his godly soul, how Karl Marx experienced his godly soul, how Albert Einstein experienced his godly soul, to how the Baal Shem Tov experienced his godly soul. You can't compare it. But there's a common denominator in all of them, and that is, they all tried to change the world. They all felt that they weren't content with the status quo. There's a revolutionary spirit that I have to go beyond the world. I have to change the world. The Jew doesn't know how to make peace with the world because he's rooted in a place that's deeper than the world, that's higher than the world. So that's why there's a spirit of revolution. What the spirit of revolution is, that could be very different. But they both have that common denominator, and that is that there's an angst, there's a yearning, a deep nichsef of the gam kolsa nafshi. He may not even know to what, but there's a certain lack of menuchas hanefesh. There's a certain lack of serenity because there's something pumping in him, and that is not part of the bria, it's part of the boire. For it to be nurtured, it has to embrace what it really is. Fully become aware of it and embrace it. And then it's like a fish in water, as Rabbi Akiva says. When the fish is not in water, it's very, very anxious. You see what the fish looks like. And sometimes when the fish is not in water, it's much more lebedik than when it's in water. So actually you think that the fish is much more alive because it's out of water. Of course it's busy dying, it's not busy living. Sometimes you see a person out of water and they're much more alive than the person in water. Their life seems so interesting. Every night they're somewhere else. Every week they're with somebody else. Life is so interesting because whenever you're busy dying, life is always interesting. Whenever you're in water, things are peaceful. So sometimes you're in water with the neshama, sometimes not. But this is the nekuda that the Kuzari makes. That you're dealing with doimim, tzemeh, chaim, edaber, and then there's a realm that's above it. Huh?
Har Sinai, that's why it originates from Har Sinai.
The Gemara in Shabbos, Yarda Sinul U'Masal. Now, but the neshama doesn't remain in a state of tahira. The neshama comes from tahira into a state of barasa. Becomes a nivra. So this is what the Balatanya says here, that for the neshama to morph into a new identity, it's always Midas HaMalchus. Midas HaMalchus, Hashem Malach Geus Lavish, is the levush that allows there to be a yesh. Because Eid Melech B'Lo, for a melech to be a melech, there has to be an am who is separate. You can't be a melech even if you have 1,000 children. Even if you have 100 children, you're not called a melech on your children. A father who calls himself a king is not in touch with who he is. A father is not a king. Why? There's a relationship of a father to children, a relationship of a melech to a nation. It's a different relationship. One's relationship is based on the fact that they are essentially one. You're one with your children. This doesn't mean a father doesn't have authority, but it means that the nature is a different type of authority. Where a melech, the very nature of the relationship is that we're actually not the same. We're separate, and we choose the relationship. A melech here is not just, remember in these days, when this Maamer was said, the concept of a melech was daily reality. For us, a melech doesn't exist really. You have the Queen of England as a schwache queen, and the King of Denmark as a schwache king. Maybe in America you have a king, but
Trump.
The concept of a real king doesn't exist, a real monarch. So it's hard for us to understand even that the Jews, for every mashal, so many mashalim were melech, because we even Hashem as melech ha'olam, because melech was ingrained into the fabric of society. It was like breathing. You grew up with a melech. You were born into a melech. Everything was the melech. Right, even in Shtaris and Rosh Hashanah, you had to write the years of the Melech. Everything was the Melech. So Melech was a very common metaphor. But the idea of a Melech is any relationship that exalts you, it puts you on a pedestal as a result of people who are not obligated to you, choose to give you a position of authority. That creates a certain dynamic in you that can't happen if one of two things happen. It's people who are not separate from you. It's people who are naturally part of you. That will never happen. And second of all, it's people that you force to choose you, and then it also won't happen. So you understand? These are two elements of Melucha. Number one, it's people who are naturally disconnected from you and choose to put you on a pedestal in terms of what you can give them. And that creates the dynamic of Melucha. It brings out something very deep in a person. What does it bring out? It brings out the quality of Melucha, the quality of leadership. I can't have this with people who are organically connected to me. It doesn't bring out that concept of Melucha. And it does not happen if I force the people to do it, because then it's not them. Malchusai b'rotzin kiblu alayim. So over your children, you can't be a melech. On the other hand, you can have 100 million ants. You could go to a colony of 100 million ants and be a melech over them. You think you're going to feel like a melech? It's not going to happen. You know why? Because the ants are not choosing you. In fact, the ants couldn't care less if you go Prava Pesach somewhere else.
You've split those two concepts before when we talked about Kafaleim Harkegigis. That there, where it's not a melech, it's Kafaleim Harkegigis, where it's because we're one, we're an organic. That was the relationship with the part of the organism. On the other hand, it was still a kfiyah.
Right. So that's the issue. In the world of Tahira, where the neshama is Tahira, there's no Malchus. Malchus necessitates the world to experience itself separate from God. Only if I'm separate from you can I become a melech. I'll give an example that's more contemporary, but it's really a similar concept, even though it's not the word melucha, and that is marriage. Can you force somebody to get married? You could, but it's not a marriage. Ein mekatchen es ha'isha ela midaita. A forced marriage is not a marriage. By definition, you have to want the person. If you don't want, it has to be based on want. You have to want the person. If you don't want the person, it can't be that relationship. Yeah. Now take another example. What happens to a president, president of the United States, the day before he's elected and the day after he's elected? I'm not talking now about our contemporary president, whatever your opinion is. You love him or you loathe him. I'm talking about the concept. Does the president, the day he's elected, learn anything new in terms of information? Whatever he knew before, he knows today. Right? Whatever he didn't know yesterday, he doesn't know today. Besides maybe a few secrets of the CIA. But nonetheless, he's a new person. What makes him a new person? What makes him a new person? He may have been a top lawyer for many, many years, a top judge for many, a top senator for many, many years. He knows yesterday whatever he knows today. But once he's elected as a president, he's a naya mensch. It's not the same person. What is it? Midas hamalchus. Okay? I'll give another example. Somebody sits in medical school for 20 years and studies and studies and studies and knows everything. And then one day, suddenly, the head of the hospital, of the neurological department or whatever department is gone. And they bring him in and they appoint him. That day, he didn't learn anything new in the medical field. But he's a different person. Why? He became a melech that day. He was chosen by people who didn't have to choose him. It's not a dictatorship. And they put him on in a position where he became a leader. It turns you into a different person.
What category was a Rebbe who teaches Torah there?
A Rebbe?
Like a melech or like a father?
A real Rebbe?
Depends. There's different relationships. The aspect of teaching, over there it's not a melech. Over there it's fakert. It's a rav and a talmud. It's not an union of melech. Then there's a concept of melucha. The concept of melucha is leadership. Melucha represents manhigus. Man malka rabbanan is the element of melucha. But it always has to be b'ratza. A Rebbe who forces his authority on his chassidim is not a Rebbe. It doesn't exist. And there's no relationship. The whole relationship that Hasidim had with their Rebbe, the first prerequisite was voluntary. If it's voluntary, then it's very powerful, right? If it's legal, you have no choice because I'm going to throw out. Then it is what it is. I guess we're not going to go there at the moment. Huh? No, it's a different relationship. It's fine. It's a different relationship, and it's not talking about the nature of the person. The prerequisite of a real relationship with the Rebbe and the Chassid was completely voluntary. Completely. Once he chose. But it's like marriage. Once you choose, you choose. You have to be a responsible person. But you can't tell a woman you have to get married. It's not a relationship. It's not a relationship.
A melech is not like
They had to be rotzen. Oh, most kings were not. Most kings were dictators. Some were benevolent dictators, some were not. But it's not melucha. It's called mamshala. Memshala is balkarcha. Melucha is beratzen. Malchusay beratzen. Melucha is beratzen. That brings out melucha. For Hashem to be a melech, he has to be in a relationship with people who are outside of him. If there's no outsideness, there's no melucha. Ein melech beloy am. Let's see weiter. V'lechei nikra hamalchus yam. You see 32, the line starts Hamalchus, middle of the page. Malchus Yam. That's why in Kabbalah, whenever it says Yam, the sea, it's a metaphor for Malchus. Why? Kihine, the Gemara says in Chulin, listen to this. Kol mar sheyesh b'yabosha yesh bayam. Gemara in Chulin. Whatever you have on dry land, you have in the ocean, the seas. Today we know you go down to the bottom of the seas, you have a whole universe there. Everything is there, all types of creatures and plants. And the Gemara makes a cheshbon, whatever you have, and the other way also. What's the difference? The difference is in dry land you see everything. You see the diversity. You come to the ocean, what is it called? The water, the surface of the waterbed covers over. You can't see what's inside. You could see a few fish maybe on top, but that's it. Yabosha and Yam represent two realities lamaila. What do we mean by lamaila? Lamaila we mean in the spiritual realms. The letters Yihi Oir, let there be light. Yihi Rakia, let there be a heaven. These are just examples. He means all of the letters that created the world are, so to speak, in the world of Atzilus. What do we mean in the world of Atzilus? They are divine energy. V'hayam shu malchus mechas aleihem. And then you have an ocean, a sea. That's malchus. That's why the yam in Kabbalah is malchus. The yam covers it. Bilti is galul in ivroyim hamesavim mehem. So that the oisius should not be revealed to any of the creations that are created from these letters. Sheimayum is galim. If the oisius would be revealed, if it wouldn't be a yam, if it would be a bosha, haya hagashmi is batal beruchnes. The gashmius would be completely bottled. It would be completely lost in the spiritual energy. Kemashal bittul ziv hashemesh b'moyer atzmai. His favorite mashal, one of his favorite mashalim, like a light wave in the solar core. What a mashal. A light wave in the solar core. It's there, but it doesn't occupy significant space. When the light wave leaves the moyer, a place where there's no moyer, right here, we don't have the solar core. Thank God we're alive because of that. The light wave is very significant. It fills your house with light. It fills your world with light. But in the moyer itself, if you go to the sun, the light wave is there. But it doesn't occupy space because it's obvious that it's simply completely submerged and nullified in the moyer. If we would see the oisius, the gashmius would also be here. Everything would be here. But what would be noticeable is the ruchnius that gives it chiyus. V'i efshalius metzias neshama o malach sheim b'chinas nefradim rak sheim ba'ava chuli elek she'ein ha'lekus begili b're'iyah mamash. You can't even have a neshama or a malach who are separate. He says even though they're in love with God, but there's somebody who's in love with God. Unless Elikus is not begilui. Even the highest malach, for him to exist, the highest neshama, for it to be a neshama that has ava, Elikus can't be begilui. Vehelim vehester zehu adei hamalchus. Ki zeh klal gadol. This is a klal gadol. What's the klal gadol? Shahamalchus yagoyremes liyas b'chinas yesh. Malchus is the cause of the yesh. Malchus is the ocean, the sea, the yam, that covers up everything that's there. Even though it's there, but you can't see it. And because you can't see it, therefore there can be the experience of a yesh. What's the Havana here? What's the Havana? The Havana here is that basically the world projects itself in a certain way. That perception of how we experience the world would be completely altered if our eyes and our minds would be able to perceive the nature of true reality. Because we don't see the nature of true reality, therefore we could live in a certain dynamic. We could live in a certain world. What world is that? That's a world of yesh. What would happen if we would see the oisius of the Bria? Really, the whole Bria is created from oisius. It's really the energy of the oisius that constitute the Bria. But what do we see in the Bria? We don't see letters. What do we see? We don't see letters. We see physical, brute reality. You have this even, as we spoke a few times, you have this even before you get to Elikus, before you get to Ruchnis, you have this even in Gashmias. You have even in Gashmias that our eyes don't perceive the nature of reality. If our eyes would perceive the nature of reality, so I'm looking at a cup, I wouldn't see a cup. What would I see? If my eyes would be able to perceive all the layers of this cup. So I would see atoms. And how many? You're dealing with numbers that are even beyond our imagination. A one with 18 zeros or so. And these atoms are in constant movement, constant flux. It's a whole world. And remember, they're so tiny, they're so small, and atoms have different components. And yet, an atom which is made up of different components of the atom, most of the atom is empty space. Most of the atom, 99.9%, is empty space. But it's so small that my eye doesn't acknowledge the empty space. So what does my eye do? It puts things together, just like two stars that are a billion light years away, and it looks like it's basically Kedei Achilles Pras, to get from one star to the other star. It's a Bezdalad Amas, even though it's only a billion light years away, which means you could travel not only your life, you could travel billions and billions of lives and not even get close. But the eyes are not goydus. At my eyes, it's a sheer Hilach Dalad Amas.
The eyes is also put together, so you can't.
That itself, yeah, that itself. The eyes themselves. So the eyes say, what is a solid cup? Even though 99.9 here is empty space. So on one level, it's one thing. On another level, it's another thing. Take a person. A person is really DNA. What's DNA? Oisius. It's all oisius. DNA, they call it digital computer code. It's oisius. That's what it is. The whole world is oisius. The whole world is divine oisius. Divine letters. But if we would see it, it's not that there wouldn't be Gashmis. There would be Gashmis. But the Gashmis wouldn't have a tfisas mukim. It wouldn't occupy space. It wouldn't have a yeshus. It would be completely bottled to the ruchnis. What do we mean by bottle? Bottle means you wouldn't see it as anything but the reflection of the ruchnis. That's what its whole metzius would be. And therefore, the mashal for that is the light rays that come into our home, come into our planet, they don't begin here. They begin in the sun. If the ray is in my house, it's certainly in the sun. It comes from there. What do we say in Adoina, in Keil Adon on Shabbos? Toivim Mayur Shabar Lekeni Yitzanim Milayim Ziv Umefikim Noiga. You ever thought about that redundancy? What's Pshat? Milayim Ziv Umefikim Noiga. Milayim Ziv means what? They're filled with radiance. Mefikim Noiga means they emit light. What's the difference? Malayim ziv is the way the ziv is inside. Malayim ziv. Mefikim noiga means the way it comes out. Inside the sun, you also have the light of the sun. But I ask you a question. If we would travel to the sun, would I say, hey, look, 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 you remember the light that came into our house? Look, it's there. It's a joke. A light wave in the solar core. It's there. Of course it's there. Fakert. It's there in an even more powerful way than it's here, because that's the source. It's there even more than it's here. But because it's there, it doesn't have its own name, it doesn't have its own identity. If you would see the ruchnias of the world, the oisias, it's not sure there wouldn't be gashmis. Fakert. The gashmis would even be more powerful because you would see it in its source. But what's pshat? Pshat is it wouldn't have a hergish of yeshus, it wouldn't have a hergish of separateness. So we have a paradox. You look at the world, on one level the entire universe is really consciousness. The entire universe is really divine letters, divine thoughts. That's what it is, it's consciousness. And yet you're walking on a sidewalk, all you see is a sidewalk. All you see is a car, all you see is a house. All you see is a body. You don't see anything of the inner core, which really captures the entire essence of the Geshem. And the Geshem, if you would see it, would not be Teufus Makkah, wouldn't have its own name. What creates this transition, this metamorphosis? This is Midas HaMalchus. Midas HaMalchus means that Hashem wanted that the world should experience itself as being separate, being distinct. He wants a relationship that is chosen by that which is outside, that which is separate, that which is distinct. In other words, in Judaism, as much as Dveikus is important, separateness is equally important. Because that's what the Yesh creates. God doesn't only want you to be one, He also wants you to be not one. If He wanted you to be one, then there wouldn't be Midas HaMalchus. Midas HaMalchus means that you're something who experiences itself as a human being. And that comes into the relationship. You come into the relationship with yourself. So the very self is the critical component of the relationship, because if there's no self, there's no Midas HaMalchus. Ein melech b'lo yam. You bring the self into the relationship. And that's what the yam is. The yam has everything, but it's concealed. I look at the yam, all I see is water. I look at the world, all I see is geshem. All I see is the physical. I don't see anything else. Even though it's really a whole different reality. With my brain, with my soul, I can begin to discern layers and layers of the true nature of reality. But this is a fascinating thing. You know, if you nibble a little bit of literature, of modern physics, the way some physicists describe the world today is incredibly, incredibly unique, because it's literally, you'll read Oisius in secular magazines or essays that in Likkutei Torah is common language. For example, I remember I once read an article, basically the whole universe is thoughts. The whole universe is thoughts, that's what it is. That's really, really what it is. When you go to deeper layers of subatomic particles, subatomic particles, yeah, they don't even speak about things having a state. They're not even a state. It's basically paradoxes are happening all the time, and your thought, your observation of it puts it into a particular reality, affects it. So it's like you're dealing with an entire dynamic universe that's very different than what we experience intuitively. It's a whole different experience. But that's really, really what's happening. And yet, we live in that world. That's part of the plan. It's not a mistake. It's not a tragedy. We don't live in that world of what's called the quantum world. We live in, we live in the world of chitzonius. That transition happens through Midas HaMalchus. Ein melech b'lo yam. That's why Malchus is the Yam. And even a neshama and a malach, for it to become a metzius that has love, we're not only talking about the physical. Even a neshama and a malach, he says, could not be a neshama and a malach if a likus was begilui. There has to be a helam v'hester. There has to be a concealment of a likus for the neshama to be able to be a neshama and a malach. If this is the case, we could soon come to begin to understand the concept of Kriyas Yamsuf. What the whole concept of Kriyas Yamsuf is, the splitting of the sea, is not a small technical thing. I mean, not stam a miracle of a splitting of the sea. The splitting of the sea represents a transformation of consciousness, as he will continue. V'helem v'hester zehu aidei hamalchus. Kol ma sheyesh b'yabosha yesh b'yam. But in the Yam, everything is concealed. So in Kabbalah, Toras HaNister, Yam is associated with Malchus. Ki zeh klal gadol sha'malchus hi ha'geremes liyas b'chinas yesh k'niskaleh. This is a klal gadol. Klal gadol means it's a fundamental principle that the Hester comes through Malchus. Midas HaMalchus is what causes and allows there to be a yesh, otherness. In other words, it is the cosmic sea that eclipses the true nature of the universe. So, if all the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as is, infinite. But the doors of perception are not cleansed. The doors of perception are clouded. They're tainted by the cosmic yam, the cosmic sea, which gives us an appearance that we see water, and we fail to see what is beneath the water. Of course, the mashal is an incomplete mashal, because in the yam, the water actually exists. It's just on top. And it continues to go down. It's just there are many other things we don't see. Here, of course, what we're saying is that essentially it's the light wave in the solar core. It's part and parcel of the part and parcel. It's an expression of it. It's a detail of it. The Gashmius is completely an expression of the Ruchnis. It doesn't have a chashivus b'fnei atzma. It's simply an outgrowth of the divine energy. That cosmic yam is Midas HaMalchus. Why? Because the relationship of Midas HaMalchus necessitates otherness. For me to love you, you don't have to be separate from me. I could love myself too. Hopefully you love yourself. V'ahavta l'recha kamoicha. It's a clear pasuk that you're allowed to love yourself, yeah? You should love your friend like you love yourself. You don't need somebody else for love. You could love yourself. Not only that, There's people who sit on mountains or in forests and they write poetry of love to the universe, to humanity, to global warming, to some perceived friend that they have in reality or illusion. On the contrary, till you meet them, the love is usually stronger. It's much better. So the same is true with every other midah in the world. Chachma, you don't need otherness for chachma. For bina, for gvura, for tiferes, all the midas you can experience within yourself. And vis-a-vis yourself. Or vis-a-vis other people, but without the experience of other people. There's one exception, Malchus. Malchus, the experience of Malchus cannot happen without otherness. It just won't happen. And I'll give again an example. You could love without anybody else. On the contrary, you could sit on a mountain and write love letters and love poems to God, to humanity, to yourself, to somebody in your life, to your child, to a best friend, whatever it is. But here's the question. Can you actually be married to yourself? Could you be married to yourself? No, I'm saying, could you be married? What do I mean? The definition of marriage is the experience of life in relation to another. That is the definition. It's not the psa atnai. It's not the psa adin. That is the definition. It's the feedback. It's the head-and-head collision. Hopefully it's not a collision. But it's the fact that two people encounter each other in life. That is the experience. You'll say, oh, let me go away from 40 years, I'll go somewhere and we'll be married. Okay, man. I mean, you could do that theoretically. But the definition of it is what happens to you as a result of the other. There's no melech. I can't experience malchus if I'm not in a relationship with my am. There's a relationship with somebody who's not me, somebody who's outside of me. And all the other mishalim of leadership in any form or fashion. The melech is the quintessential form of leadership, but really any form of leadership, it's about the impact of the people. It's the impact of the people. Ein melech b'loyam, that's what it means. Ein melech b'loyam is not a technical thing. Why don't you say, Ein oyev b'loy ahuv? Say the same thing. Ein oyev b'loy ahuv. There's no lover without somebody being loved. Of course there's no lover without somebody being loved, but the object of the love could be me. Or the object of the love could be somebody I never saw in my life. Or the object of the love could be somebody that I'm not connected to. And the love could be very intense. In fact, as I said, sometimes it's much more poetic when you're not there. Because there's nothing that disturbs it, not even you. Like somebody once said, why do you have to come here to remind me that I don't love you? If you wouldn't be here, I would think I love you. It'd be wonderful. Ein ohuv b'lo yoyev, but the ohuv doesn't have to be a person in reality right in front of me. Melech, I can't sit on a mountain and say, I'm a melech. I mean, mitvas b'stam melech. Melech is the experience that happens from the contact, the feedback, the relationship. It's being in an active relationship. It's not in a theoretical relationship. All the other midas could be theoretical.
You're a servant, you're not a melech. You could be on a mountain and be a servant to a melech.
We're talking about a leader can't experience the emotion of the soul called malchus, the fuse of the soul called malchus, cannot be experienced if there's no actual relationship with another. Chachma bina, I could sit in my room and be maskel haskalos. I can be very intelligent. Fakert, the more isolated, the more wisdom. Right? No, in many ways, because you have the mental space to be able to think, to be able to develop. Right? Great minds went into isolation for a reason. They don't want to be bothered by anything. The melech needs the am. Can't be a melech without the am. Every soul has midas hamalchus. Every soul, it's one of the 10 midas, one of the 10 koiches. But midas hamalchus can only come out through a relationship with somebody else. You cannot bring it out in yourself. I told you, somebody could be studying medicine for 70 years and they know everything. It's not malchus, it's wisdom. The day they're appointed as the head of the hospital, they become a melech. But that they can't do on their own. It's basically the fact that the people appointed you and you're in a relationship with them. You're responsible to them. You understand? You could think the same is true all these types of experiences. The author, somebody could write a book in his library, again for 50 years, with great chachma. but it's the publishing and people reading it and the response he gets from them that puts him into a different place. You can't facilitate that on your own. You need the da'am to bring that out in you. It's a different pchina. It's a self-awareness that only comes from people outside of you, from the feedback, from the experience, from the collision.
But if our midos are mirrors of the Rebbeinu Shalom's midos, Malchus is different. I mean, unless you go back to what you used to speak about with Yaakov and Leah, etc., the Rebbeinu Shalom's Malchus comes about because he hides his true self. He's a cousin, the Yam Mashal, or whatever much you want to give. In our relationships, we don't develop a relationship with other by withdrawing who our real is, so that the relationship can emerge. We're not dependent on having to hide, to change ourselves to be mitzamtzim. It's not the exact same mirror.
Okay, that's a very interesting question. There is an obvious difference between Hashem's Malchus and our Malchus. Since Hashem is Einoid Mulvada, it's the only reality. So for Hashem to be a Chacham, to be a Maven, to be a Chesed, a Chazdan, he doesn't need hell and he doesn't have to conceal himself. But for Hashem to be a Melech, what does it mean? For Hashem to say very vulnerably, I want to be your Melech, as the Gemara says in Rosh Hashanah, Imru lefanai malchis Rosh Hashanah, kedei shetamlichuni aleichem. Really? It's like you'll turn to an ant and say, do me a favor. I really need you to make me a king over you. Now trust me, the relationship between us and an ant is far closer than the relationship between man and God. The relationship between ants are sometimes much smarter than men and much more ambitious and much more planned out. They're a little small, they're weak, but the ants are ganz choshev, what they do. And still we understand it would be a joke. You're asking an ant to turn you into a melech and you want to feel good. So God, Hashem, who's infinite, looks at every nivra and he says, do me a favor, on Rosh Hashanah, don't leave me in the dark. Shtam lichuni aleichem. When the Rebbe would say over the Gemara before Rosh Hashanah, he would say that Eibishter betzich ba'ayidin, machmer amelech. Hashem betzich, he begs a Jew, I need you to make me a melech, really? And if I don't make you a melech, what's going to happen? You're going to have a nervous breakdown? You're going to have a self-esteem crisis because I'm not going to make you a melech? Just go out of planet Earth and just look at what planet Earth looks like from a spaceship, right? Not only I'm not a speck of dust, I'm not even a fraction of an infinitesimal of a speck of dust. The whole planet looks like a marble. Looks like a pea. Looks like a pea. So in the pea, imagine you go to a pea on Rosh Hashanah. You know what a pea is? A green pea. And you go into the pea and you find a little verimol somewhere and you say, do me a favor, make me a melech. Make me a melech. And then he says, yeah, you're my melech. And I'm like, oh, now I feel good. It's a madnazach, yeah? But the truth is that this is the chiddush of Malchus. The chiddush of Malchus is that God in his infinity craved to be in a relationship with that person that he creates. And if the moment he stops creating him, the ant, at least I don't create. At least the ant is different. Here, he creates, and then he says, oh, I want you to make me a melech. How am I going to make you a melech? With my mind and my breath that you gave me. So there's one condition that has to be, and that is Hester. There has to be concealment. That I, in my identity, should be able to feel that I'm an ant. Or even better, I am my own man. But that's only for Midas HaMalchus. Midas HaMalchus requires otherness. Now the truth is by people,
Who has that?
Hashem conceals his infinity so that we don't see ourselves as the light wave in the solar core. We don't even see the light wave. We see completely separate. There's three stages. There's the light wave in the solar core. There's the light wave outside of the solar core, but you know it comes from the sun, and then you don't even know that you don't even see it's a light wave. You call it biology. You call it, I don't know, chemicals, amino acids, whatever you call it. Yeah, we have names. We have names for it.
Doesn't Malchus represent the word? Almost the next.
That's why Malchus is always the bridge between the higher world and the next world, because it conceals the reality of one world, and it allows a new reality to emerge as a result of it. So everything comes through Malchus, but it's done in a way where it creates room for otherness. By a person, you also have something, but it's not mamish the same comparison, because in a relationship, you also have to be able to create space for another. If you don't create space for another, you can't have the benefit of Malchus. You can have a dictatorship, but you can't have the benefit of Malchus. Benefit of Malchus means it's always how you impact me, but it's how you impact me. If I am controlling the you, then it's me impacting me. You can't be a melech over your computer, you understand? Why can't you be a melech over your computer? Because whatever your computer is telling you, it's what you told the computer to tell you.
Because the government's looking to the computer.
Yes, yeah. You can't be a melech over somebody that you control, because then you're not benefiting from the relationship. You tell yourself you're benefiting, but you're not. It's not a relationship with another, because you are the one controlling it. You have a joystick, and you're going like this, like this. That's why it's always about the autonomy. The more freedom you give, the more autonomy you give, the more you could be a melech. The less freedom you give, the smaller you become. Real malchus only happens by giving people space. Why are dictators frustrated people? Because they know that they're not malachim. They know that there's no real relationship. It's just, we're forced. In other words, you're in a relationship with yourself. You're not in a relationship with, that's why they're so frustrated. So what do frustrated people do? They dictate even more, because they're frustrated. So that makes them only more frustrated. The more you move back, the more space you give, the more success you have. Because it's actually a real relationship. The thrill is much deeper. It's people really choosing. When you control the situation, it looks good, but it's nothing. It's rotten. It's a joke. You typhus what I'm saying? This is a very big yisoid.
The space is the concealment that you're talking about?
The space is the concealment. The space means that I create space for you where I am not present, so you can be here. You could shine. You could make decisions. Now, if you decide to be in a relationship with me, it's going to be powerful. If I decide you're going to be in a relationship with me, okay, so it's me talking to me, fine. It doesn't fill the void of a relationship, that's the point. It will not fill Midas HaMalchus. We have, in the jinim of the soul, you have Midas HaMalchus. There's a void that comes when there's no Malchus, when there's no relationship. That void can't be filled if I dictate it. It looks like it's filled, but it's not. This is one of the great challenges in relationships. So you need that symptom, that helim. You have to have the yam that covers up your presence in order to allow the other person to be, the other person to flourish, the other person to emerge. Any relationship, I have to hold back. As much as you have to express. If you don't express, there's also no relationship. That's the other side, right? A person who doesn't express anything, guess. I have to express, but as much as I express, I have to express to the point where I have boundaries. I can't kill your eye. I can't destroy your eye. Then it's over. Then it's just me. Fine. You want to live yourself. You can live yourself. You're not going to be able to fill the void that Malchus fills. Because Malchus is a koyach of the nefesh. This is true with with all types of relationships. You especially see it in close relationships, where there is that element of camaraderie. Was?
Camaraderie means a balance between the Malchus and one
yes.
and the Malchus
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. Exactly. The t-shirt, I'm very easy to get along with once you learn to worship me. If you could just learn to worship me, it's good. It's even brought in Sifrei Kabbalah, the reason that Kiddushin, Kiddushin can happen through three ways. Kesef, Shtar, Biyah. The Ramah brings in Shulchan Aruch, the Rambam says in Hilchos Yeshus, Nahagu Kol Yisrael Lekadosh B'Kesef B'Shavah Kesef. We do Kiddushin B'Kesef. The Ramah brings in Shulchan Aruch, Nahagu Lekadosh B'Tabas. We use a ring. V'yesh lem tam b'tikunei zor. From the few places that the Shulchan Aruch quotes the Zohar, the Ramah quotes the Zohar. Why we use a ring? Because that's not an halacha. Why we use a ring? Okay. So in Tikkunei Zohar there's a whole idea about a tabaz. One of the ideas that's brought is that the tabaz, the ring, really is a graphic image of tzimtzum. It's brought in the Arizal says that before the world was created, God's light was infinite. Is infinite. So there's no place for anything. So he had to withdraw and conceal his light and create a vacuum. And in that vacuum, in the chalal, that's where the world emerges. The tabas, when you look at a ring, you have the encircling gold or silver, or white gold or white silver, and inside you have a vacuum, an empty space. So essentially, it's a graphic image of penetrating, creating a hole, an emptiness, and around it is the light, which is the image that's used in Kabbalah for the universe. The light is around it, Soivav Kalalman, and inside is empty. So when the man, the chassan, places a ring on the Kala's finger, what he's saying is, God wanted to get married to us. Yeah. He wanted to get married to us. That's essentially the purpose of creation. Anna Emloich, Hashem wanted to be a melech. He wanted to be a melech. Shetamlichuni aleichem. There's only one issue. He wanted to get married to us. Now, you could be a perfect bachelor, in America especially. You could be a perfect bachelor. You could be a bachim at Alamailas. You can have your own company. You can have your own business. You could own 3 homes, a private jet. You could be slim and handsome and all the milas in the world. The only thing a perfect bachelor can't be is, can't be married. By definition, you need somebody else for that. So, I mean, I don't know if the expression is probably improper, but I just want to bring out the point. God essentially is a perfect bachelor. He has all the milas in the world and beyond the world, right? He's perfect, but he's a bachelor. He's alone. By definition, he's alone. He wanted to get married. There's only one problem. You need somebody else. So how do you make somebody else? So you have to make a tzimtzum. He had to conceal himself so there could be somebody else. So when we put the ring on the Kala's finger, what we're saying is, I also want to get married. In order to get married, I also understand that I have to create room for somebody else. If I don't create room for somebody else, I can't get married. So the ring is the empty space that I create in my ego where you could come in. If the only space that fills my life is me, I have no space for you. So we may be living in the same house, but whenever you express yourself, I have no space for it. I block it out. It's me to exclusion of somebody else, or it's her to the exclusion of somebody else. You can't have a relationship with like that. You can't. So what happens in many relationships? One of 2 things happens. Either one of them wears the pants and the other one becomes subservient. You familiar with that model? So basically, technically, you obliterated one party and that's fine. Or you basically live separate lives because you can't connect. So you're in your world, the other one is in another world. In other words, you run away from each other. Because if you're together, you're dealing with 2 bulls, untamed, who are goring each other. So it can't be. Either one becomes a sheep and one becomes a bull, or they both remain bulls and they detach physically or conceptually. Or there's a third model. And the third model is the model of Malchus. The model of Malchus is the understanding that I don't have to be afraid of it. On the contrary, there will be a void in me that will be filled as a result of me not owning the entire conversation, not owning the relationship. There's the value that emerges through a real relationship with a real person who is outside of you. It's scary for many people. It's dramatic, but the mystique, the blessing, and the challenge of a relationship is exactly that.
How do you separate this from love? Why is love not the same thing? It's also part of that. What is the myth of love?
The emotion of love I can experience within myself. I don't need the actual, tangible knocking against your head.
But relationship without love, it's not.
But to experience the malchus is the sense of, it's a certain sense of exaltedness in the self that happens as a result of the impact of the other. That I need the other. I cannot do that in myself. I can't create that in myself. I could sit on a mountain and be filled with love. To trees, to worms. People do it. To plants, to the galaxies, to myself. A person sits on a mountain and he imagines his girlfriend and he writes poetry to her. It works. Huh?
Platonic.
Platonic, yeah.
It's not
doesn't even exist.
selfish Mida where I'm malchus, I'm creating a void in me so that I can...
Not I'm creating, no. I'm not. If it's trying to fill me, then it's not
No, I'm
malchus.
saying I let another have a separate identity so that they can be sort of the same Maamer with me, right? And at that point, I'm doing it for myself.
That's a good question.
Even if you
So this is another important yesod about Malchus. Malchus in Yiddishkeit is different than Malchus in the world. Malchus in the world is, You have a New York mayor who will spend $100 million from his own money to get reelected. In other words, he's craving the position, right?
He buys the office.
He buys the office because he has a void, whatever it is that he wants to fill. Fine. Malchus in Judaism, so take for example David HaMelech, yeah? Didn't want it. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want it. Didn't want it. They both had to be pushed and forced. It's brought that the Baal Shem Tov did not want to be, he didn't want to be public. And basically his Rebbe told him, Achia Shaloni told him, because of some subtle sin that you did, you're going to get punished. What's the punishment? That you have to reveal yourself. You have to reveal yourself. For the Baal Shem Tov, that was a punishment. The fact that we could say his name today was a punishment. Because for him, much better, he's dveikus with God, Vastafras. The idea of world fame didn't speak to these people. Why? Because they were completely wholesome inside of themselves. Fakert. To take them out of it was a punishment. It was a punishment. There was a Yid who told me, he remembered, in 1950, they were pushing the Lubavitcher Rebbe to become a Rebbe. He said, no, a whole year. So once he said, if you're going to nudge me again, I'm going to take my wife, and we're going to run away, and we're going to live on an island for the rest of our life, and nobody's going to know where we are. Stop nudging me. And he meant it. He was very genuine. Why is it? It's not stam because they're good people. It's a definition of malchus. If I become a leader, or a rebbe, or a manik, because I need it, then I can't be here for you. You're here for me. If I need to be a rebbe, for whatever reason, the money, the power, the covet, whatever it is, whatever the reason is, or maybe my ambition, then I need you, so then I can't be here for you. Why can't I be here for you? Because really I'm a slave to you. This type of rebbe is a slave to the people, because the people are the one who give him his chshivas. So he actually can't even think about the people. The people have to be thinking about him. He becomes subservient to the people. He's actually not a melech, he's an eved. That's why the moment he sees the people are not with him, he goes crazy, because it's all about what he needs from the people. A real leader means you're actually leading the people. You're here for the people. How could you be here for the people? The people are here for me. The people are here to make me the leader. The answer is, it's a punishment. I'm very happy. You want to throw me away? That's wonderful. That's a reward. Why am I doing it? I'm doing it as a sense of a duty, of a privilege. This is my mission. It's my achrayus. So now I can actually say, what do the people need? So real malchus, by definition, has to have a component of selflessness. Yes, that's what real. If not, it's not real malchus. It's a different thing.
That's why it works on an individual level.
Yes, an individual level too. You can give much more to people, right? When you're not sitting there and asking, how can they feed me? Ask not. Ask not what the people can do for you. Ask what you can do for the people. The only one who can really do that is a Moshe Rabbeinu, who says, I don't need this. I don't want this. I'm happy in the desert with sheep. You don't get this. I don't get a thrill from the attention. I don't need it, Moshe says. It's not like if Kairach smiles to me and says, you're such a good guy. You're such a good-looking Rebbe. Yeah? Here, use my Lamborghini. Yeah? Moshe gets a thrill. He doesn't care. It's a punishment for him. Now you can actually be there for the people. In marriage, it's the same thing. The greatest moment in a relationship is when you could be there for the other person, not because you're waiting for their compliment. I can actually be there for you, for your sake. And what happens in you? Your malchus actually comes out.
If it's so opposite, I mean, they feel anyone who is being doing malchus will be fulfilled. They feel fulfilled afterwards.
Very good question. So why do you feel fulfilled afterwards?
It's the result. Malchus is the result.
It's the result, excellent, but one step deeper. Because Nasa Adam B'Tzalmeinu K'Dmuseinu, because we're created in the image of Hashem. And this is where modern psychology didn't hit the spot yet. It's going to get there in a few years, but it didn't hit yet. In all therapy today, the focus is you have to have your needs met. You have to have your needs met, always, which is an important idea. Is the relationship fulfilling your needs? What are your needs? What are your fears? What are your concerns? What are your issues? right? Express, express, express. Our grandmothers didn't have needs and concerns. They just followed the program. And in our generation, you have to talk about your needs and your concerns. It's all about self-expression, which is an important idea. What they're missing is the fact that part of the soul is Malchus. Because we're created in the image of Hashem, why did Hashem need to be a melech? He also needed attention. God said, you know, I'm pretty lonely here. Nobody tells me I'm nice. I never had a mother to nurture me. I never had a father to hug me. I'm mamish alone in the world. So basically I'm going to create a universe and I'm going to have them say Hallelujah 900 times a day, which is what Judaism looks like, and scream, Hallelujah, 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 you're the best, you're the best, you're the best, you're the best. You know how to resurrect the dead, you heal the sick, you kill us, you give us life, you support us, you give us rain, you give us snow. Have 50 million Jews say it every single day, 3 times a day. God says it feels good. Vifel is Ashir. Vifel is Ashir. How many times? I mean, the most egomaniacs don't have to hear it every time. So many times. It's like, please, it becomes a little pathetic, no? It's like, enough. So those who don't think God is listening don't have an issue with it. So it works. It works for a lot of people. But if you really believe that God is listening to you, it's like, well, imagine you do this to your wife. You think it'll work? It'll work for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 2 days, 3 days. If you sit an hour, 3 times a day, you're this, you're that, you're that. I'm a sugar, get out of here. So today, do you think I'm so insecure? Yeah. So you have to understand the Nekudah. The Nekudah really is that Malchus Lamaila is not because I needed the validation. Right? It's because the Arizal says it's brought in many Svarim, Emek HaMelech. Teva HaToiv Lahetiv. Lahetiv Lebruv means, Malchus means that God in his deep core felt he wants to share himself with another. Why does he want to share himself with another? Not because the self was missing something. Not because I feel horrible about me and I need your validation. It's coming from a place of wholesomeness. It's a choice. It's not, God needs us and therefore he loves us. It's the other way around. He loves us and therefore he needs us. That's a very big difference. So one of the, and it's a shmuz b'fnatzmai, but between the Kabbalim and the philosophers, there was a huge machlokes. The philosopher said, God needs you. It's a joke. He doesn't need you. You need him. He doesn't need you. The word need has to be obliterated from the vocabulary of Judaism. The Rambam and others, no need, there's no needs whatsoever. Everything is for you, you. He gets nothing out of anything. Not Matan Torah, not mitzvahs, and not yitzim. It's all for you. The Mekabalim, there was like a whole romance, God has a husband and a wife, it's all love, and of course he's vulnerable. So a huge machlokes of avodah tzarich kavaya. Does Yiddish guy do anything for God? Does he get anything out of it or not? The philosophers, of course not. Well, what's he get out of it? Again, you'll tell the little ant, go right, and the ant says, no, I'm going left. V'chora af Hashem. He's very angry because the ant went left. Really? Imagine, you have an ant in front of your house, he says, go right, put on tefillin, and don't eat that worm because it's treif. And the ant says, I'm going to eat. And you go crazy. I'm going to destroy you, I'm going to kill your kids, I'm going to kill your family. The whole world is going to go crazy. The world's going to become like metal, there won't be rain, you're going to become a sugar, the enemies will eat you up. Really? Because the frog didn't listen to you? Relax. So the philosophers always said, nothing, it doesn't mean it. God doesn't get angry, he doesn't get upset, he doesn't get nervous, there's nothing happening, there's no emotions. He does things that if a person would do it, you would say, oh, he's angry. That's what he says. That's how they saw. They created this detachment because they had to protect the integrity of God. It's understood. Yeah. The Mekabalim went the other extreme. They're like, no, avoid this tzarech kavaya. Hashem is a very deep relationship, very vulnerable in this. The Alter Rebbe was the one who wanted to make peace between the Mekabalim and the philosophy, the Mer Nevuchim and the Arizal. So he explains, basically, that it's not that God loves us because he needs us, it's he needs us because he loves us. Meaning, Avodas Hashem does affect Hashem. But it doesn't affect Hashem because he is essentially a frail creature who's dependent on the validation. It's because in his core, in his essence, he chose to share himself with others. He chose to be vulnerable. He chose to be in a relationship. Because he chose to be in a relationship out of choice, out of love, therefore I'm in that relationship. You're going to affect me.
But the Ein Sof is untouchable.
The Ein Sof is essentially untouchable. But because it's Ein Sof, it has no rules. And the Ein Sof chose to be touchable out of its choice.
That's what Malchus really did.
That's what Malchus accomplished.
It's a total different Malchus than the head of the hospital getting the head of the hospital.
So Midas HaMalchus is not because I'm needy. Midas HaMalchus is because I'm choosing to be in a relationship with you and to be affected by you. In Tanya, the Balatanya says, the Gemara says about Metzia, it's a Peladik thing that he compares it to. The Gemara brings about certain Amirayim who were very big. Physically, they were. So the Gemara says, how did they have children? For physically, it didn't work. So the Gemara says, Ahava the Chekes es habasar. Love makes the flesh shrink. So the love to their spouse, it made their flesh shrink and they can have children. With Papa, yeah. Yeah, a whole Amid of Gemara, exactly how it worked. Huh? So the Balatanya brings this Gemara and he says, the Rebbeinu Shalom is infinite. So he also can't have children. He can't have a relationship. So he says, Ava the Chekes es habasar. His Ava made him shrink. Made him shrink. You shrink, now you can have intimacy. So he brings the Gemara. That's the pshat. Ava the Chekes es habasar. It made him shrink. It made him finite. So what he says in Tanya Perik Mem Tes. It made him finite. If he's finite, now there's place for you. Why? Because that's what Ava does. Ava makes, it allowed him to denounce himself for the sake of yourself. So Lefi the philosophers, V'char Hashem is just a euphemism. It's as though he's angry. Lefi the Mekabalim, no, there's an impact, there's an effect. In the reconciliation, it becomes very interesting. Because the V'chara Af Hashem B'chem is based on a choice, so therefore it can always be healed. It can always be cleansed. Do you understand? It's real, but it can be cleansed because I'm not defined by it. When I love you because I need you, I'm very, very defined by it. And if you hurt me, it's over. You're done. Because you killed me at my core. But if I need you because I love you, so there was a choice, so there's always freedom in the relationship. Because there's always freedom in the relationship, so we're never stuck.
You need two sides for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's why there's bechira, there's free choice. So therefore, B'Hashem, Midas HaMalchus is not because I need you. It's rather, I want you. Since we're created in God's image, so what is by us Malchus? The same thing. There's a certain component in me that I want to be here for you, not for me. And if I do that, it fills my Midas HaMalchus. And if not, there's a void. So here's a very interesting concept. There's a void in us that's created when we don't have a relationship for the sake of the other person, not because our needs are not met, but because we don't have the ability to give the way God gives. That void is a different type of void. It's not I have a void because I didn't get from you what I got. That's something else. It's a void because I didn't live up to the truth of my soul. There's a truth in my soul which says that I'm a melech. What does it mean I'm a melech? I'm a melech means I can experience to be in a relationship for the sake of giving. And as a result, a void is filled. But it's not a void because my needs have to be met, because I'm not confident. There's a wholesomeness in me. But nonetheless, as a result of the relationship with you, there's a certain self that gets satisfied because Hashem person is created in Hashem's image. It's a deeper type of void, yeah. It's a deeper type of void. It's not a void that's born of lack of security. It's a void that comes from wholesomeness. Because a wholesome person can give. If I'm not wholesome, I always have to take. That's why any Rebbe, any leader who becomes a leader because they crave it, they could never do their job right because they're always following the cue of the people. They can't be there for the people.
And the void becomes bigger, worse.
The void is always bigger, yeah. That void is always bigger. That's why generally, Somebody asked me, well, how do you know if you could trust somebody, you could trust a rabbi? I said, if he tells you not to trust him, you could usually trust him. In other words, if it's about him, then you have to be careful. But when you see a person who fights tremendously for a position of leadership, right? You have to look at it a little bit with, because you know what's going on. It's all for God. It's mamish for God. Fine, but you want to examine that. You want to examine that because you want to know. I mean, you want me to surrender completely when what is going to be done with my surrender? You want to protect. You have to protect.
Melech is power and David. I'm the Melech with David. And a good relationship is basically the opposite. I'm here to be
The real melech is not a melech. There's a pasuk in Malachim when Shlomo HaMelech passes away, Rechavim takes over, and the Jews ask him to take down the taxes because his father was very tough. Shlomo took a lot. So Rechavim consulted the young advisors and the senior advisors. Senior advisors said, they're right, let them go, be easy. The young advisor said, no, be tougher on them. So they revolted. He lost it. It was over. It was a mistake. But they told him, if you're going to be an eved la'am hazeh, they'll treat you as a king. If you will be a slave to the people, then you'll be a king. What's pshat? A real melech is a bigger eved than any eved.
Servant leadership, it's a big contemporary concept.
The Gemara in Hoiri is, Gamliel said, Gamliel appointed 2 people to become the leaders. They said, we don't want. Gamliel said, K'meduma, sheshrar ani noisem lachem, avdus ani noisem lachem. You think I'm making you leaders? I'm making you avadim. I'm making you slaves. What's the vart? What do you mean? The melech is the malchus chayev misa. Yeah? The Gemara says in Brachas, Hamelech kiven shekara shuvein ezoikiv. Everybody by Shemon Esra, you go Baruch Atah, Hashem, and you stand. The Melech, once he goes Baruch Atah, he stays down. His head has to be down till the end of Shemon Esra. So imagine in Shul, the king, his head is down the whole time, and everybody is like this. If you want, you could throw spitballs on him, you could throw watermelons on him. He's like this. Al whole Shemon Esra, he's down all the way. Really? What's covered on? I'm standing, and he's kneel. He's prostrated. Because the Melech is really a bigger eved than everybody else. There's a Rambam in Hilchos Malachim. The Rambam says, "Keshem," just like the Torah says, you have to honor a king with tremendous kavod. Kach, the Torah says he has to be humble. What's the Keshem Kach? It's 2 separate dinim. Even though the Torah says you have to honor him, he has to be humble. The pshat is it's the same geder. The reason the Melech has power is because he's really powerless. The Melech's power comes from the fact that he's a slave to the people. In other words, it's not him. It's the people. The moment it becomes him, he's a dangerous person. Now, not many kings lived up to this ideal. We know that. Most kings were dictators. At best, they were benevolent dictators. That's ultimately why democracy became such a powerful force, because humanity suffered in the hands of tyrants and monarchs who were either absolute crazy nutjobs, or, at best, they were dictators who were not so evil and malicious, but they were dictators. You know, from Louis XIV to Nebuchadnezzar to Achashverosh, etc. But the real Melech, the ideal Melech, his head is more bowed down than anybody else. Why? Because he has so much power, he has to remember, it's not that I deserve this power, or I own this power, or I need this power. No! I'm happy to be in my bedroom. I'll serve God on my own. I don't need this. Yaakov hu hakatan, David hu hakatan, Moshe anav Moshe. So why am I doing this? To serve. Who? To serve Hashem and to serve the people. In order to serve the people, I represent the people. Because I represent the people, so the power of the Melech comes from the people. From the fact that he embodies the people. The moment it's a personal thing, you're here for me and I'm going to manipulate you, then there's no cover to the Melech. The whole cover to the Melech is because he's completely selfless. If he's selfless, when I give honor to the king, who am I giving honor to? I'm giving honor to that which the king became, that which the king embodies. What does the king embody? Selfless dedication to Hashem and to Knesset Yisrael. More than anybody else, because he represents the leader. That's a real leader. That's a real leader. He's a much bigger eved than everybody else. Other people have a personal life. Other people have their own life. And he actually doesn't have that. He doesn't have that. I'll tell you an interesting moment in something that happened once. In 1985, there was a very interesting debate, a very interesting court case that happened. You're familiar with the story? The sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe had a grandson. He had 3 daughters. One was killed. He had one daughter who married the Lubavitcher Rebbe. They didn't have children. And he had an oldest daughter who had a son. His name was Gerari. He decided that his father-in-law died. His Seder died in 1950. He had a huge library, one of the biggest libraries he had. Already in Russia, a tremendous library. Things like the Baal Shem Tov Siddur, Kisvei Yad of the Rishonim, like very, very expensive library. Very precious. So his grandson, he had 2 daughters. One was killed. One was Schneerson, and one was Gerari. So he said it's 50-50, and he has access 50%. And he went in without, but he didn't ask the Rebbe because he knew it's not so simple. He took hundreds of books and he sold them. The Lubavitcher Rebbe found out, and he told his brother-in-law. He said, "This wasn't a private library. It doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the Rebbe as a Rebbe. It belongs to the Chabad movement. It doesn't belong to us. We can't sell the books." He didn't want to stop. There was a court case. A court case. It was a huge court case, 1986. And it went 1986. It was a major, and there was a very interesting court case. The question was, a Rebbe built a library, who does it belong to? If it belonged to him as an individual, he died, he had 2 daughters, 50-50, Schneerson and Gerari. If it belonged to the Rebbe not as an individual, but as a Rebbe, he's a leader. So it's not, his children can't take it away. Even the next Rebbe can't take it away. It belongs to the people. Fascinating debate. It was basically, people like Elie Wiesel testified. In Britain, there was a famous conservative Kabbalist, Louis Jacobs, philosophers. It was very interesting.
Was here in New York, that case?
Yeah, in New York, on Adams Street.
Oh, there.
On Adams Street. The judge was Judge Sifton, who was a son-in-law of Niels Bohr. Niels Bohr's son-in-law was one of the greatest physicists. He said, not Jewish guy. It was a fascinating court case. They went who the Baal Shem Tov was. One of the biggest questions was, how does a Rebbe get power? Where does he get the code? We know how a president gets power. There's elections. We know how a tycoon of business gets power. You own a lot of money. Where does a Rebbe get his power?
See right here.
This is a fascinating question. Who decides he's a Rebbe? What type of rights does he have? Can he sell your house? Can he take your money? Can he take your books? This was a very interesting. So they brought in secular experts on Chassidus, how it works, and how it worked in Chabad. So at the end, the people to testify the best were the daughters of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. He had 2 daughters alive, Mrs. Schneerson, Lubavitcher Rebbe's wife, Rebbe Tzachai Moshe Schneerson, and her sister, her older sister. Her name was Mrs. Gerari, Mrs. Chana Gerari, her older sister. So they both, but they were, one mother decided with her son, because it was her son. And Lubavitcher Rebbe's wife felt otherwise. But the sisters were very close, but this was a very serious debate. So she was an older lady already, she was in her 80s. So they decided they're not going to bring her to court, they're going to go to her house, Lubavitcher Rebbe's house, and have her testify. So they brought all the lawyers from both sides, and they do, what is it called?
Deposition.
Deposition, yeah. Deposition went for hours. It went for hours. And she was an older lady. I mean, the 2 sisters were already in their, this is in their 80s, the 86, 87. So the lawyers on behalf of the Chabad side were very afraid because the depositions, they play with your mind. You have to some lawyers.
Who brought the case?
Huh?
Was it Lubavitch that brought the case? Or was it
Yeah, Lubavitch first tried with a Likkutei Torah, whatever he didn't want, so they went to court. Yeah, they went to court to make an ikul, to make a restraining order, and then ultimately the whole thing went into court. First they had to restrain because he was taking books. He made a lot of money. He sold a lot of
Did
books.
they ever get the book? Was that our kid who went to Russia?
They got the books back. They got all the books back. It took years, but they got the books back. He got to get other books back. The communists confiscated most of the library. Yeah, that's already the Balatanya's library.
So they took the deposition. They were playing.
So they posted. So they were afraid. So Rabbi Krinsky, who ran the case, is Lubavitcher Rebbe said there. I heard from him that he went into the Rebbe and he said, they're going to really grill your wife. It's not going to be simple. So he says, you don't worry about my wife. Sie hat a Schneeus in cup. She has a Schneeus in head. She'll pass with flying colors. Don't worry about mine. Anyway, they grilled her. Ooh, I saw the video of it. There's a video somebody took. Yeah, they take her to it. They grilled her and they try to confuse you. You know, when you're 86, 87 years old, 2 hours, boom, back, forth, back, forth. They didn't stop. They didn't stop. They wanted to prove the library is personal property. At the end, they turn to her. They're the lawyers of Gerarik. And they say, Mrs. Schneeson, tell us the truth. Who did the books belong to? They belong to your father, or do they belong to the community? So she looked and she said, the book, or to the Hasidim, or to the Hasidim. She said, the books belong to my father. So they were like, whoa, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's wife, delegitimize everything. And she said, but my father belonged to the Hasidim. My father belonged to the Hasidim. My whole father belonged to the Hasidim. My father didn't have anything else. He belonged to them. That's what she said. They were like, whoa. Sifton, in his verdict, this was the line he said that made him decide. Yeah, he said he understood that the relationship doesn't have its counterpart in the legal and secular world. It doesn't have it. It's a different relationship. It's a relationship that's completely based on choice on both levels.
That itself is great humility on the part of the judge.
Yeah.
To actually say such a
thing. Yeah. He said he realized it's a different relationship on both sides. The chassid can't be forced to choose his rebbe. If yes, it's a different relationship. He has to choose. He can't be forced. The rebbe can't be forced to go in. It's all voluntary. The rebbe has to choose, and the chassid has to choose, because there's no legal. It's not like you don't own anything, and I don't own. You don't own me. I don't own you. He said once they choose, because it's a choice, they decide that it should be complete. If I don't choose, it's not going to be complete because there's a part of me that resents it. If I'm forced to be in a relationship with you, so part of me is in it, part of me is not in it. If I choose it, then it's a free relationship. So he says, once they choose it, it's complete. That he says, this is my life. I'm completely dedicated to you. Not because I need, not because you need. Maybe because I feel you need, but it's not to fill my need. So therefore, my very entity belongs to you. So in a way, because it's a choice, it could be much deeper. Why could it be much deeper? Because it's not here to fill my void. It's being done from a wholesome place. If it's being done from a wholesome place, then it's absolute. So the dedication is a different type of dedication. From a position of strength. Because if it's coming from a position of weakness, then the moment you become strong, you're like, get out of my life. Some people go into relationships out of weakness, and then when they become strong, they're like, I really don't need this. I really don't need this. The only reason I need you is because I'm not independent, because I need somebody to tell me that I'm great. So the moment I don't need that, the moment I go to therapy, bye-bye, Charlie. If it's from a position of strength and from a choice, it's a whole different Indian. That's Malchus. Because we each have Malchus, we each have this quality in our own way. When I don't live this quality, I have a void, but it's a different type of void.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.